Next up, we have Mr. Ishan Puri. Ishan is the founder and CEO of SYNOCATE, a business that helps 7th through 12th graders through the college admissions process. Please welcome Mr. Puri.
Perfect. So can I see how many incoming 12th graders we have? You're going into senior year? Parents or students? 11th? Okay, 10th? 9th? Okay, a lot of 9th. How about middle schoolers? Any middle schoolers? Okay, a lot of middle schoolers too. And college students? I know we have a couple down here. Okay, great. Well, my name is Ishan, and I went to Stanford, and this is my startup. This is my company called SYNOCATE. It stands for Synthesize, Innovate, and Educate. And I'm going to echo a lot of what Stanley talked about and what we've been talking about today, but try to make it actionable for you guys, to give you some tips so you can actually take what we keep iterating and use it in practically, your SAT, ACT, or in your everyday life. Let's go to the next slide, please. So the way we started, I'm originally from Los Angeles. This is actually my first time here in Chicago, is I went to Stanford. I did science fair throughout high school. I went to the international level. My parents went to school in India, so they didn't know the system. I kind of learned it on my own. And once I got into Stanford, my younger brother, who was in 10th grade, started asking me, what's the secret? And of course, there's no secret sauce to get into these top schools or into college in general in the US, but there are a lot of things that I wish I had known earlier. So I ended up writing actually this book, which I wanted to show you guys, called The Applicant. And I'll be here at the back all day. So come and talk to me. And I put it on Amazon, and I said, why can't I help other students and parents? And I was still a student. I was a freshman at Stanford doing my undergrad in economics at that time. And it became a bestseller. A lot of parents and students started to buy it. And they approached me. They said, can you help me? Can you help my son and daughter? And that is, how we started SYNOCATE. And basically since last year, we have built up a very big program based on this book. We have about 150 counselors that help students from all over the world online through the admissions process. So let's go to the next slide, please. Here's a little bit more about our story. And let's go to the next slide. This is what you guys need to be thinking about as an applicant to college, either undergrad or grad here in the US. I really think about it in 4 key buckets that you guys can see here. This is straight from my book, and we've refined this over time, over many, many years. I wrote this book in 2009. So I've been helping students. I've seen all types of students, professional ballet dancers, people that go on to write books, people that end up representing the United States in Olympics. We've had all types of students. And so for any student, these are the 4 key buckets. And today we'll be really talking about the second and third bucket, which are more practical. And if you're in 9th and 10th grade or you're in middle school, you should be focused on the first 2 buckets here, academics and activities. And if you're in 11th and 12th, you want to be focused on the second 2. You need to start thinking about where to apply, how to apply, and what you want to do with your life. Something like 80% of college freshmen in the United States end up changing their major in college at least once. And among our students, that rate is around 30%, which I think is even more important than helping kids get into these top colleges, is helping them figure out what they want to do with their lives. Next slide, please. So when we start thinking about a student, like 7th grade, 8th grade, we get a lot of students coming to us, or parents even in elementary school, like, how do I encourage my student to grow? We try to bucket them into one of 2 areas generally, and this can change too. Either you're more on the quantitative side, so you're on the STEM side. Can you raise your hand if you're more on that side as a student today? Okay. Or you're more on the qualitative side, generally humanities, business, liberal arts. Can you raise your hand if you're more on that side? You don't need to be shy. I want to see this so I can tailor this a little bit. And many students don't know, especially as you go younger and younger. Like, I don't expect a 7th grader to know what they want to do, but we want to pull out that inclination, and a lot of times parents can help with that process. They can see what their child is doing, they talk to their friends, and work with us to figure that out. Next slide. So we're going to talk about the story. Everybody knows GPA, SAT 2, SAT 1, ACT. Those are just raw numbers. But to get into college here, you have to build a story. And even this is applicable for jobs, graduate school, business school, law school, anything like that. Next slide. So this is an approach that I invented, and we've used probably with about 3,000 to 4,000 students. When we think of activities, we bucket them into 4 key areas: in school, out of school, competitions, and social work. And a lot of parents and students, they'll ask me, oh, I don't do enough volunteer work, social work, or I'm not doing any work experience. Does this matter? The answer always is, it depends on you and why you're doing those things, but this framework can help you get to that answer really quickly. Next slide. So within each of these 4 buckets, we have 4 different levels: local, state, national, and international. I can give you my example. So I participated in science fair since the 5th grade. I was forced into it. I hated it. And I lost every single year, up until 10th grade. I tried my best. I tried all types of projects, and I started to advance, but I only got to the local level. I moved to the state level in 10th grade, and I lost by a mile. I was like way behind. I'm originally from California. So I revamped it. I practiced at UCLA. I got myself an internship. I emailed a bunch of professors. And in 11th grade, I won first at state. I went to nationals. I was first at nationals, and I went international. But that took like 9 years, right? So that's the whole point of the SYNOCATE approach. We want to start with the younger students. If you want to go to international, you have to start in 7th, 8th, 9th grade. And it's not the end-all, be-all if you get to those levels. Most students will never get there. But we get in a lot of students to top Ivy League schools every single year who never get to the national, state, or even international level. That's because they have a real passion, and they pursue that in the best way possible, which is usually locally in your community. Next one. And so when you're thinking about how to build a story, you need to list all of your activities across these 4 buckets. Then you need to highlight the activities that are similar across these different areas. And those become what we call activity threads. And a thread is a combination of 2 or 3 activities that link together in the same bucket or across. So my example, I taught middle schoolers when I was in high school about the importance of STEM and physics and math. So we had Play-Doh and different things, and that's social work. I was in competitions, like I mentioned. I did what's called Intel and Siemens science fair competitions, so that's the second bucket. And I researched at UCLA. I did linguistics research, so I researched creativity in language. So it's an overlap between mathematics and language. And so that's out of school. So those 3 activities create what we call a thread. Next one. And here are some more examples of different activities in the first 2 buckets. Everybody kind of knows what a competition is and what social work is. But what is in-school activities? Those are things like school clubs, volunteer work linked to your high school, competitions at your high school like essay competitions or things like that. Out-of-school activities are things like research. And if you're into the arts or into humanities or business, starting a company, building up a supplemental portfolio of dance, music. We help a lot of students with that. Those are some things you can do outside of school. Next one. And the ultimate product of all this work is what we call a 1-sentence approach. And the goal of this 1-sentence approach is to have a sentence that you can say within 30 seconds when you get interviewed to college, or on your common application when you're writing your essays. Many students use this when they're applying to jobs or when they're applying to graduate school. They use the same sentence that we developed in high school. Next one. Here's an example. This student, it's a very long sentence for this particular student, but you can see it starts general. I'm an innovator. And then it gets a little bit more specific. Who wants to use technology to improve the world with education? So that's kind of specific. And then she has listed 4 actual activities that she did in high school that support this interest. And she's going to write about these throughout her applications to college. This student got into MIT and Stanford. We started working with her in 9th grade. She knew she was interested in some sort of science, but she had no idea what. And by 12th grade, she was really focused on this. Now she's a rising senior at MIT studying engineering, and she's going to be working at an education startup. So you can see it's very similar to what she wrote about in her college apps 4 years ago. Next slide. Here's another student that started with us in 9th grade. They had no interests really at all. And basically what we did here is in 9th grade, we got them exposed to Java programming, so we had them take this course. In 10th grade, they learned about apps. They told us, oh, apps sound really interesting. Can you help me make an app? And so with their counselor, we had them take a course throughout the entire year. And in 11th grade, they built their app, they launched it, it got traction. In 12th grade, they wrote about it. This student is going to Harvard and studying computer science. So you can see you need to build your story over time. And your story doesn't need to be this discrete. Many students like playing video games, for example. This was one of those students. And they told us shyly, Mom and Dad, they probably don't care about this, but I love playing video games. And that is exactly where you have to focus. Those things you do for fun. Ultimately, you want your job, you want your career to be something you enjoy, not something that you're pigeonholed into. And so when you're thinking about your interests, think about those random things you do for fun. Next one. And this is how Ivy League, so we have a team of about 100 counselors, 150, and they are former admissions officers. They are graduates from Ivy Leagues. I went to Stanford. My team, my core team went to Stanford, Harvard, Berkeley, and I mean, our extended team has gone to basically every Ivy League school. This is how they rate applicants on a scale of 1 to 9 across 2 buckets, in case you guys are curious. And they rate you from 1 to 9, and a 9 is very hard to get. You can see here on the screen what a 9 means. So our goal is to get a 6 or 7. This is just a little practical thing that I wanted to show you. Some people like to have quantitative metrics to go after, so I just wanted to show you. These are some insights that we use to train our team that you might find interesting. Next one. And for those interested in STEM, or engineering in particular, we actually have to do 3 core things really to differentiate ourselves. There are many universities like Penn and Columbia's Fu School of Engineering, that actually have separate admissions processes for STEM students. The first is that strong desire to study engineering through your essays and your activities. The second is we try to get our students to get excited about research with a professor at that university, reach out to them, actually work with them in a summer and say, I really want to go to Columbia because I've worked with this professor, I've seen their research, and this is an area where I want to be there, essentially. And the third thing you can do is course load. Many of these will require you to take SAT 2, Math Level 2, and they will require you to take physics, chemistry, or biology. Those are just practical things you have to do to even apply to some of these engineering programs. And you have to match your major with your AP or IB course load. So if you're taking physics, you want to go into physics, you better be taking the highest level physics that your school offers. Next. This is some of our team. You can see they're very diverse from, some of them have spent 20 years in the admissions office at Stanford, Harvard, MIT. Others are recent graduates working in the industry, and a lot of our students want to work with them because they want to become like them, and things like that. Next. We've built out a bunch of software to help with this process. So this is an essay editing portal that we've built. A big part of applying to college is writing essays. And our students tend to submit them at 12 o'clock, midnight, and they need it by 8 a.m. So we built this software for them where they can get automated and human feedback depending on what they want and what they need within 24 hours. Next. So we get students in every year to every college, basically, that you'd want to go to. There are 4,000 colleges in the US. Most people know the top 100. They probably actually know the top 50. We get students into more than 100 schools every year. And next. And this is our website. I have a booth outside. I actually flew into Chicago this morning to talk to you all, so I'd love to get to know you, tell you more about it, learn about your child. I actually love it when students come talk to me. So if you guys are interested, I'd love to talk to you. And thank you so much.
All right, thank you. That was a great presentation. SYNOCATE seems like a pretty cool organization, especially if you get started early. So since most of you guys are early on in high school or late in middle school, that could be something very cool.